Ajnanaतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। पञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। आनन्दलीलमय विग्रहाय मगधीविचिरसुन्दराय तस्मै महप्रेमरसप्रदाय चैतन्यचन्द्राय नमो नमस्ते। नित्यानन्दनमस्तुभ्यं प्रेमानन्दप्रदायिने कलोकल्मषनाशाय जन्मपतये नमः। अजनुलम्बितभुजो कनकवदातो सङ्कीर्तनायकपितरो कमलायताक्ष विश्वम्भरो द्विजवरो जुगधर्मपालो वन्दे जगत्प्रियकरो करुणावतारो कनकजलजगात्रो नीलशोणो जनेत्रो मृगमदवरबालो मलतिकुन्दमाला तरलतरुणवेशो नीलपीतम्बरेषु स्मरनिभृतनिकुञ्जे राधिका कृष्णचन्द्र तवैवास्मि न जीवमि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वं मम चरणन्तिके। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वती नामिने श्रीवर्षभानुविदेवे दायिताय कृपाब्धये कृष्णसम्बन्धविज्ञानदयिने प्रभवे नमः। माधुर्योज्ज्वलप्रेमज्ञ श्रीरूपनोगभक्तिदा श्रीगौरकरुणाशक्तिविग्रहाय नमस्तुते। नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दिनतारिणे रूपनुगविरुद्धापसिद्धान्तद्वन्द्वहारिणे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते गौरगोविन्दस्वामिनित्य नामिने श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे। First of all, my limited Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev, Nitya Krishna Vishnupada Sutra Satyashima Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj, Shiksha Gurudev Om Vishnupada Sutra Satyashima Bhaktivedanta Madhusudan Goswami Maharaj, to the lotus feet of Jagat Guru Nityalila Pravishta Vishnupada Sutra Satyashima Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Srila Prabhupada on his appearance day, Nityalila Pravishta Vishnupada Sutra Satyashima Gour Govinda Goswami Maharaj on his disappearance day, all the Rupanuga Gaudiya Guru all Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis in Sri Radha Govinda Gaudiya Math, Guyana, and also dear devotees, Srila Prabhupada, the life and soul of Gaudiya Math, the establisher of Sri Gaudiya Math, all of the home of all of ours. And when he came, he brought so many amazing personalities with him, his disciples. So he's like the son of the Sampradaya. And today we saw the photos from Vrindavan, and the wonderful image of Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur in the center. He is the son of the Sampradaya, like in the sun, the form of the sun. He's surrounded by the rays. And all of his rays are his disciples, our Param Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj. Just a few days ago we were discussing about his glories. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Shidwara Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Daita Madhava Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Kamal Madhusudan Goswami Maharaj, so many. So the Vaishnava I just mentioned, Srila Bhakti Kamal Madhusudan Goswami Maharaj, Vartma Pradarshaka Guru of our Gurudev. So all those personalities were just amazing. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, his figure is certainly in the center. So he was the son of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Satchidananda Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 13 children. and he was praying for the ray of Vishnu to come. So he wanted a pure devotee to manifest. So that's why, as we heard, Bimal Prasad came as the special mercy of Shri Bimala Devi. And Shri Bimala Devi gave him that ray of Vishnu. So then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a city magistrate in Jagannath Puri. He was in charge of Jagannath temple. So his house was on the temple road where the parade of the chariots, Jagannath Rath Yatra, was going on. So now his home is Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. Srila Bhaktidaita Madhava Goswami Maharaj took care about the building. So when Srila Gour Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was very, very small, maybe he was half a year old, in 1874. By the way, today's his 150th Vyasa Puja, 150th. So some think that 149, but actually no, 150, because the first Vyasa Puja is actually his actual day of birth, that is first Vyasa Puja. So then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his wife were able to climb the stairs of Ratha, of a chariot of Jagannath Dev. And Jagannath stopped by the house of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He didn't want to move further on. So although the servitors of Jagannath were trying to pull him with ropes, with even horses and elephants, it was not possible to do. So Jagannath was standing. So he was waiting actually for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada's darshan. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his wife were able to climb the stairs, and when Srila Bhaktivinoda was giving his little son possibility for darshan of Sri Jagannath, he touched the boy's head to the lotus feet of Jagannath. Then Jagannath dropped garland to the neck of the boy, little Bimal Prasad. So that was a sign of great, great mercy. So when Srila Bimal Prasad, as his name was about 7 years of age, then Srila Bhaktivinoda gave him Kurma mantra and the worship of Kurmadev, Lord Kurma. So he was very, very much interested in all spiritual subjects, and also he was expert in all sciences, mathematics, astrology. So when he was still a college student, then he was given the name of Siddhanta Sarasvati. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also gave him type of initiation. He brought him the garland of Tulsi, and he gave him the mantra and gave him worship of the deity. But as we heard before, he met his spiritual master years later, so a little bit about that a bit further. So when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was studying, he was eager to study about in any situation. So when he was given at any time when he was given the chance to preach, he was preaching also something about Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was taking him to all the events, spiritual events he was organizing. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur established Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha. He established in Calcutta Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha. Also, according to his duties, he was taken to many, many places like Nagar, etc. So he was preaching there, and he was taking Bimal Prasad everywhere with him. At one occasion, he had to go somewhere being busy with his governmental duties. And he told Bimal Prasad, you give class, you lecture. So Bimal Prasad was, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was giving some class, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was working with a group, and about maybe 40, 50 people were coming. But the preaching of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was so strong, and when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was back, he noticed that only 4 or 5 people were remaining. So strong was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. So he was speaking the truth, and he didn't really consider the reaction of the people. So, and the situation was, as we heard, very, very critical at the time for Gaudiya Sampradaya. The Gaudiyas were considered very low class, and they were engaged in some kirtans for some occasions like funerals, etc. They were getting paid for that. So they were singing melodious kirtans, and it took maybe 10-15 minutes to sing one Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare, all those things. So Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur stopped that. But how everything started? First, he scrutinizingly studied all sciences, mathematics. He was expert. Astrology, he was expert. We already heard that. He was given Siddhanta Sarasvati, the title. But he said, actually, I came to this world not to count its stars, but I came to give the transcendental knowledge, the highest purpose. So that's what his name, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, means. So Siddhanta is the highest conclusion of the Vedas, but the highest conclusion of the Vedas is what? Bhakti. So that's why his name is Bhaktisiddhanta, and also his name is Sarasvati. So Sarasvati is wife of Lord Brahma, personification of one of knowledge. But that is not the highest manifestation of Sarasvati. The highest manifestation of Sarasvati is Shuddha Sarasvati, pure Sarasvati, and that is Srimati Radhika. So the pure servant of Srimati Radhika is Sri Varshabhana Das, as his name became when he took initiation from Srila Gour Das Babaji Maharaj. We'll hear a bit further on how it happened. So Srila Gour Das Babaji Maharaj gave him the name Sri Varshabhana Das. So the dear servant of Varshabhana Vidayata means the daughter of Maharaj Vrishabhana, Srimati Radha Thakurani. And he is the expansion of the loving glance of Srimati Radhika, and his name in Nitya Lila, her name, is Sri Nayana Mani Manjari, means the merciful extension of the glance of Srimati Radha Thakurani. That's why Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he was giving a hint, speaking to his disciples about his Gurudev. He said, my Gurudev was having tendency for the service of Srimati Radhika, but I have tendency for Krishna. he was saying, like as a hint to his disciples. So he was, how to say, speaking something about the mood of his guru, like in a hidden form to his disciples, and he was mentioning that sort of different vision. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada was appointed as how to say, a tutor for the son of a king of Tripura, the prince, in about 1895. So he was teaching the boy all the scriptures, but mostly he was giving bhakti. So the wife of the king, the queen, became very disturbed. He said, oh, you can see that our son, the prince, in the contact of that Bimal Prasad, his tutor, is becoming more and more like of a sadhu nature. So the diligent, how to say, very vigilant mother, the queen, became apprehensive. She said that, oh, the boy is now becoming a renunciate, so how will he be your successor? How will he be the next king? The prince is supposed to become a king, isn't it? So they did what? She talked to the king, and the king gave Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur the lifelong pension, like really, really significant amount of rupees. And 1 rupee at the time was, you could sustain the whole family for a year or something like that. Or many, 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 many rupees, like lifelong pension means, okay, he needn't have to work anymore. So he gave up. So in his life, we could see that he was scrutinizing all types of knowledge and giving that up, like giving that up. So even now, we use astrology sometimes, but only for spiritual purpose, for establishing some calendars, for opening temples, what is favorable tithi, for not favorable tithi. So he gave preference as Bhaktisiddhanta, as Sarasvati, means the servant of Srimati Radhika Varshabhaya Das. So that's why in his pranama mantras we use Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. But most prominently in his pranama mantras we sing Namo, what's that? Gauravani Pracharine, that name, Gauravani Pracharine. He was teaching Gauravani. And what is Gauravani? The essence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions. Anarpita chirim chirat karunaiva tirna kalo samarpayata mannato jvalarasam svabhakti shriyam haripurata sundara didikadanda sandipita kandaris puratava shachinandana. Let that Shachinandana Gaura Hari Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu be eternally situated in the innermost chambers of your heart, resplendent with the molten gold, the color of Srimati Radhika. He has come to bestow the highest manifestation of bhakti, Swabhakti Shriyam, Unnata Ujjvala Rasa, Unnata Ujjvala Rasa. The essence of Madhurya Rasa. What is that? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was preaching that rasa, that type of relationship. What is that? The mood of the very, very intimate maidservant of Srimati Radhika, the highest of that, he was teaching. So, Unnata Ujjvala Rasa Swabhakti Shriyam means the beauty of Srimati Radhika's lotus feet, symbolized by the manjaris. So that's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada was preaching the same message as Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. What Srila Raghunath Das Goswami was experiencing on the banks of Radha Kunda, and specifically what Srila Gour Das Babaji Maharaj, his divine guru, was meditating upon. Kathai go prema moy radhe radhe, that. But also certainly Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur has given all the worship in all the 4 rasas. But as we heard today also, he could not preach Prayojana Tattva so widely, so bravely, because he had to cut the jungle. That's what Srila Gurudev was always stressing. He had to cut the jungle of the Apasampradayas we have just heard. 13 Apasampradayas were there. So the so-called devotees were totally deviant. Even Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur at that time used, spent quite a long time to find one example, one copy of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Even it was so much forgotten. But specifically, what Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, years after, was speaking on the banks of Radha Kunda. He was speaking. So we have spent enough time for establishing anartha nivritti, so fighting the inauspicious qualities. Now the time has come to establish artha pravritti, means the highest ideal. What is that? Worshipping of the lotus feet of Srimati Radha Thakurani. That's why he was preaching that. But we mentioned Srila Gour Das Babaji Maharaj. Also, we were intending to tell the story of initiation of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. So when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur came to Navadvip Dham and made his residence in Godrumadvip, in the Swananda Sukha Kunj, that was about 1898, something, 97, 98. Then immediately he met Srila Gour Das Babaji Maharaj. So Srila Gour Das Babaji Maharaj was coming to hear from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That was great, great personality, but he humble position of Shiksha disciple of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That's why the moment Srila Bimal Prasad saw Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, immediately decided, that is my Guru. Definitely that is my Guru. So he understood, if I'm going to take initiation from someone, then definitely that must be that personality. I must take initiation. So he humbly approached Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, asked, oh, please, can I accept your shelter? And he said, oh, you're so advanced, you're a disciple of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You're so perfect in all types of knowledge, and I'm quite illiterate. Actually, he could not write his own name. But it doesn't mean anything, because in any discussion he was establishing very, very pure conception of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and quoting all the evidences from Shastra, definitely. But anyway, so then again Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada approached Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, please accept me as your disciple. Oh, I will ask Mahaprabhu, Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Next, the following day, Srila Prabhupada came. Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, I forgot to ask. Then the following day, Prabhupada came, and then he received mercy from Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj in the form of chastisement. Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, the academic qualification, learned, being learned in all respects does not make one have qualification to obtain bhakti. That was it. So again, Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj type of rejected him. So anyway, in the same way as you remember, Srila Lokanath Das Goswami was not accepting Srila Narottam Das Thakur at once. So it took some time. So 17 times he was rejected. In the same way as Srila Ramanujacharya was not accepted by Achyuta Preksha. So many times he was rejected. So in that same way, Srila Prabhupada also. So finally, Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was asked by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, father and first teacher of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, please give your mercy to him, otherwise you will kill the poor boy. So you have to give his mercy, your mercy, you have to give him initiation. So that was the way Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada became the only moon, the only disciple of Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. So why having so many stars which are quite insignificant and don't give any light? It's enough to have one moon. So that bright moon was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, or rather the sun of Sampradaya, so very, very figurative, symbolic representation of Krishna Balaram Mandir decorations today, where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur is in the circle, in the sun rays, in the center. That was amazing, amazing decoration today. So we worship him like this. Then he started preaching. We heard how our Param Gurudev came to him in 1915, became one of his first disciples. And then there was actually no people to beat the drum and to perform puja, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada, who took sannyas actually in 1918 from Srila Gour Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj for his picture. He was very much criticized for that, but anyway, he did so. He, answering the question by the auntie of Srila Param Gurudev, oh, you're speaking about the maths, you're speaking about opening temples in all the islands of Navadvipa Mandala, all over the world, who will look after them? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada said, Vinod will do. So I think we forgot to tell this 2 days before. Then the mission of Gaudiya Math was established, and it was growing. So Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave training to the cream of all Bengali society at that time. The most unqualified, most elevated young people came. They were actually very, very high devotees eternally. Some of them Sadhana Siddha, some of them Nitya Siddha, sent by Srimati Radhika to Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Most of them very qualified in Sanskrit. Yeah, all of them very qualified in Siddhanta, very, very deep understanding of Siddhanta. So Srila Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj and Srila Bhakti Rakshakshidhar Goswami Maharaj and all many others. So like a constellation around the moon, so many bright luminaries, not just insignificant stars, the great luminaries of bhakti and knowledge. So they were representing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada was exemplifying that principle of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami introduced. Utility is the principle. So he was very practical. And he was sacrificing anything for preaching. Any principles. For example, there's a principle of fasting during Janmashtami. Right? We fast during Janmashtami. But one time, Srila Prabhupada came to one area where the temple was, and the brahmacharis there were supposed to prepare the festival, to do many engagements. But when Prabhupada saw that none of the arrangement had been made, he asked his disciples, "Oh, what's the matter? Why are you idle? Why are you sitting?" And he said, "Oh, Prabhupada, today is the fast day, and we're weak. We're weak. We cannot do physical work." And Prabhupada said, "Cook rice, offer to the deities, and give the brahmacharis to eat." So he made that, how to say, exception from the rules. The main thing is preaching. If you're too weak to preach, then on the order of Guru, you can take, anything Guru will say. So the order of Guru also introduces standards. So the standard was introduced for taking rice on Janmashtami for the sake of preaching. That's not the rule we don't follow right now, but like he introduced that for the sake of preaching. For the sake of preaching, he was wearing a luxurious coat in the winter, He was driven in an automobile, like 1934, 33, those years, in a luxurious coat, driven in the automobile in the holy dham of Navadvip, Mayapura. So Babajis were going crazy. What's going on? What's going on? What's this Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is doing, He's breaking all the rules and regulations. What is that? Actually, they were breaking all rules and regulations, as we saw, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada crushed them even before the start of Gaudiya Math. That was 1911, I think. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very sick, already bedridden. So he sent his son, Shri Bimal Prasad, Varshabhana Vidayata Prabhu at that time, to participate in one big assembly where many brahmanas were present. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur made a speech there. It was a 3-day function. Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was fasting. He was not taking even a grain from them, And then his turn came to speak. And he started speaking. So that brilliant speech was later delivered as a booklet, or rather like small book, called Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. So first of all, Srila Prabhupada started glorifying the Brahmanas and Brahminical culture. And then he was speaking about the, vice, about the defects in the modern day Brahmanism, which is deviated totally from the principle of Vaishnavism. Then he established the principles of Vaishnavism in such a way that the Brahmanas became, very disturbed. First, they were very happy because they were being glorified, and they became very much disturbed. But the public finally, at the end of that, function, became cheering, and they wanted to take the dust of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. They wanted to make abhishek of his lotus feet and take the dust of his lotus feet. So finally, so much, turmoil happened that the police had to guard him and put him in a room. They did abhishek in a nice way and then deliver that abhishek water to the public in a massive distribution of abhishek water of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. So you can see. So after that, when he established Gaudiya Math, he sacrificed anything for preaching. He sent his preachers to the Western world. First was Srila Bhakti Hridoy Bon Maharaj, and Srila Bhakti Pradip Tirtha Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, who was still a brahmachari at that time. So Srila Bhakti Hriday Bon Maharaj learned German language in 2 days. 2 days. He learned the same amount of days, I think, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada learned English just by reading dictionary. So later Srila Bhakti Hriday Bon Maharaj learned German in 2 days. And he was speaking before, the Hitler's, how to say, people, before everything, I think Himmler was there, no? So just the beginning of fashions in the 1934. So everybody say Hi Hitler in the beginning, and Srila Bhakti Hriday Bon Maharaj also said, for the sake of preaching, anything for the sake of preaching, Then he came back by ship, and later he brought some disciples, Sundarananda Prabhu from Germany anyway. So that preaching was somewhat successful, but not as much as certainly the preaching of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada later. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada was using electricity in his preaching. The electricity was, how to say, quite a luxurious thing. And before accepting Sir John Anderson, the governor of Bengal, back in 1926, I think, or 25, those years. So immediately all the Sri Chaitanya Math was electrified. So they brought electricity there for the sake of Srila Bhakti. Sir John Anderson, They were feeding him meat, literally. A separate kitchen was made, non-veg, in holiness, His Highness. Everything was done for preaching. Everything was done. So later John Anderson was very impressed, and he said, I'm grateful for you're providing me the possibility to see this holy place. And if you need any help, then most welcome to ask from me. So then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada was organizing electrified dioramas, exhibitions of dolls depicting Krishna Lila, Rama Lila, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, specifically Lila, everywhere. So he was being criticized. You're using electricity. You're making mechanical figures, moving figures. For what? For Krishna. So utility was the principle. And the preaching was the essence. That was the main principle. So then, just before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur left, he said, I have done a lot of preaching. He said, I've made a lot of endeavors, but he made a hint that many new devotees are surrounding him, many kanishtas, so they cannot, cooperate within him. So he wanted to leave. He wanted to leave early, maybe prematurely, but that was his decision. So he left quite early. And before he left, he was in Jagannath Puri, Chataka Parvat place, in that Gaudiya Math he established, and he was meditating on Govardhan. He was quoting the verses, Nijanikata Nivasa Dehi Govardhanatam, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, and Srila Rupa Goswami's verse about Govardhan. So he was meditating on his Swarup, he was meditating on his internal seva. Then he gave last instructions to his disciples. He said, whatever happens, even if your preaching is not accepted in the wide circles of society, please continue to be the specks of dust at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami Pad. Please don't let the sevenfold flame of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's conception, means 7 great results in the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Cheto Darpanam Arjunam Bhava Mahani Vagna Nirvapanam, Shri Karava Chandra Kavitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtan. Don't let it be extinguished, always make it burn. So preach that flow of conception of Shri Rupanuga Gaudiya Guruvardha all over the world. So thus he left. And then Gaudiya Math became a great dangerous situation, great turmoil. So our Param Gurudev Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj was one of those pure followers of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur who were continuing that preaching. So the preaching was continuing, and in the 80s, in the 90s of the previous century, a great, great devotee, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Prabhupada, was developing the conception of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. That's why it's not accidental that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj accepted the day of appearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada as his day of disappearance. Because he was also saying, after visiting his native village, Gadaigiri, and seeing his Gopal deity for the last time, at that time he was saying, I have done a lot, and I'm quite disappointed now. So he was making a hint, that in his society, Srila Bhakti, Vedanta Swami Maharaja's Prabhupada's ISKCON, there's so many deviations, etc. So he decided to leave. So he left on that day. He was a great, great devotee. He was not an ordinary devotee. Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Swami Maharaj was marking him very significantly. It's not accidental that many of Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's disciples, around 50, I think, took the shelter of lotus feet of Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Swami Maharaj. That was the year of 1996. And you are very fortunate also. Prabhu was telling Sujan Prabhu that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj visited your area. So he visited Trinidad. I don't know if he visited Guyana, but Trinidad for sure. So I was very happy to have seen him. It was so wonderful to hear for us. So so Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was a pure devotee of Gopal from its very birth, because his village was called Gadaigiri, and the establisher of the village, Gopal Giri, was a pure devotee of Gopal, deity of Gopal. And once one Babaji, near Vrindavan, was performing bhajan. And he was worshipping Gopal, and Gopal came to him in a dream and said, "Oh Babaji Maharaj, I want you to carry me to Puri, and to give me to a pure devotee." In Puri, everybody knew Gopal Giri, everybody knew. So, give me to Gopal Giri, Gopal said. So, that Babaji came to Puri. Well, first he didn't believe, like, oh, some dream, ordinary dream. But Gopal came again and beat him with a stick. Hey, I told you, bring me to Puri, give me to Gopal Giri to worship. So he brought him to Puri and found everybody knew Gopal Giri, great devotee. So finally he started worshipping, and all of his descendants started worshipping. So Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj remembers his grandfather. He was a pure devotee, and he said, okay, I will leave on that particular day, some significant day. I will leave on the day. He said, okay. And on that day, he was like on his already last bed, and he was saying, are they starting puja in Jagannath Mandir? Yes. So he said, oh, now the path to Jagannath is open, so I'm going. So he went directly to lotus feet of Jagannath. He left. So he was a pure devotee, his grandfather. So his father also. And but Naravat Lila, the pastimes of young age and marriage and having 7 children, all that was going on. When he was married, he was 21, his wife was 16, and he was exemplifying, giving his example to his disciples. He said, I passed 7 times in my life, and I had 7 children. That's it. So very, very figurative for Grihastas, his disciples. So, but he had to support family, so he worked as a teacher in the local school, and then gymnasium, I think he worked in. So he was also teaching them about Krishna consciousness, and later many of his students there at school became his initiated disciples when he became an acharya. So he learned very good English, and therefore he was able to read also the English literature and in English language. So when his children became grown up, then in the year of 74, I think he left his house in the age of 45, something. So he took saffron clothes, and he took the name Sri Gaura Gopalananda. His name was Gaura Gopalananda, Gaura Gopal Ananda. So he was traveling in all holy places, But he wanted to find his guru. That was his desire. Finally, he came to Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, just by entering the city, from the side of Mathura, he paid attention at the board, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The founder Acharya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Prabhupada. Oh, but Gour Govinda Maharaj wanted to find the guru in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, definitely Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the pure Vaishnava, he wanted. So when he was given by devotees then an issue of Back to Godhead magazine, at once Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj saw the image of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Prabhupada. At once he understood, this is my guru. So I want to take initiation from him. So he asked for a darshan. And devotees were not eager first, but anyway, then, oh, he was busy, Prabhupada is busy, but finally he got his darshan. And the first thing Srila Prabhupada told him, have you taken sannyas? No, I will give you sannyas. The first thing Srila Prabhupada told him, I'll give you sannyas. So then he gave him initiation, but actually sannyas happened the year after. On Ramanavami day, when Krishna Balaram Mandir is called Ramanreti, was opened. On that auspicious day, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was given sannyas. Then some disciples of Srila Prabhupada were amazed. Oh, just a new devotee came, and immediately sannyas. So they asked Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, you gave him sannyas, he's a new boy. When Prabhupada cut, he said, you're a new boy. Srila Gour Govinda, he said, Gour Govinda was a devotee from his birth. So Gour Govinda, he gave him the name, and Gour Govinda Maharaj was his sannyasa name. Srila Gour Govinda Swami. So then Srila Prabhupada gave Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj 3 missions. The first one is to translate his books from English to Oriya, his native language. So very first seva Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj received was to translate something from Hindi to Oriya. So from Hindi to Oriya, Prabhupada said, oh, give him separate room, give him a pen and paper. So started translating. There were no computers, obviously. So immediately Prabhupada gave him that seva. Second seva, open the temple. Open the temple in Bhubaneswar. Why Bhubaneswar? Because Bhubaneswar is the gateway to Puri and also the capital of the state of Orissa, or Odisha as they call it now. And Swami Prabhupada was a bit disturbed by the attitude of the Pandas in the Puri, in Jagannath Puri, who decided not to allow the Western devotees into Jagannath temple. Still that rule is practiced till now. So Swami Prabhupada stopped visiting Jagannath Puri temple himself as a sign of protest. So, but he said to Gour Govinda Maharaj, I want Jagannath to come to Bhubaneswar. So build such a temple as Jagannath Puri and make it as significant as that. And the third mission he gave to Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj one time when he was visiting the building ground of the temple, because Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was living there, in a straw hut, in a simple straw hut. And Prabhupada was also staying there, and just next in another straw hut. So he whispered in his ear, accept disciples and train them. So that was the third mission, accept disciples and train them. You have to have your own man, otherwise you cannot maintain, he said. You have to have your own man. Because there were so many impediments, Then, big Bhagavat Maharaj, he was then with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. And he was helping him. But he wanted Prabhupada to live in a guest house. Prabhupada, we arranged for a guest house for you, and a nice facility, everything. No, I will stay here. I will stay by the place my Gour Govinda is staying. I will stay by this place. So a straw hut was made, a separate arrangement with a very simple facilities, very simple toilet, everything. Prabhupada was staying there. By the hut, my Gour Govinda is staying, like this. So then Prabhupada made the first stone ceremony in 77. In April, already he was feeling very bad, but I think he was taken to Bhubaneswar because the Gauri Kunda water is very good for health. So they were giving him Gauri Kunda water. And he was weak, but anyway, he was staying there. And that was the last temple he made the first stone ceremony for in, I think, April, May, 77. Then he already went. Then he went to London, and after London, he returned to Vrindavan and gave up this world. So anyway, that was a very, very good sign for Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. So all of his life, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was translating books. So until he translated all the books, he was not giving himself any rest. So his Guru Seva is just exemplary. He was not going to sleep until he had finished one chapter or a certain amount of material being translated. So when he finished, and it was late at night, then he was going to sleep. So the devotees were staying up, waiting for his last Mahaprasad, like to 12 o'clock, to 1 o'clock, and then take Mahaprasad and go to rest, like this. On planes, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was translating. Everywhere he was translating. Don't go to sleep until you translate. So that's exemplary Guru Seva, like we're bowing down, we're asking for his mercy to make us Guru Sevaks like this. So he was very, very simple. And he was amazed one time. He was visiting some temple where one Acharya of ISKCON was, how to say, GBC. So he entered one room. He was thinking that was a bathroom. No, he was thinking that's a temple room, but actually there was a bathroom, with golden handles, golden handles. That was a bathroom of the GBC Acharya of that area. So Gour Govinda Maharaj entered the room, he paid obeisances. He was thinking it's a temple room. No, that was a toilet. Like this, how simple he was, living in a straw hut, paying obeisances, the golden toilet, So like this, and he was giving Siddhanta very, very straightforwardly, Guru Tattva, he was giving straightforward. That's why he was not loved. In the same way, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was not loved at all, because he was giving, Siddhanta. He was giving Siddhanta about Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, preaching into the nose, so to speak. They were shocked. They didn't love him. You remember how in the beginning we were saying that he was taking up Bhaktivinoda Thakur's preaching, and then 5 people left, or 4 people left only from the audience. 50 people went away because he was speaking the truth. So, so straightforwardly, he was speaking Jiva Tattva. Jiva never falls from Vaikuntha. He was preaching this. Jiva never falls from Vaikuntha, but they were voting, do Jivas fall or not fall from Vaikuntha? 18 voices from 23 voted that they do fall from Vaikuntha. Gour Govinda Maharaj was very unhappy. He returned from Jagannath Puri in 1995 to Bhubaneswar. He was giving that class. He was thinking, he was saying that, I was given that position of GBC 10 years ago, but that was most unfortunate part of my life, because now I have to listen to all of that, So he was speaking the truth. He was always giving the truth like this. Guru, who is Guru? Who can give you Krishna? That is Guru. You want 100% Krishna or 1% Krishna? 100% Krishna. He was very lovingly chastising his disciples, but it was very straightforward. About a hot spot, the disciples were sitting. He was, one disciple, he was being seated by him, just close to him, and he was having a very, very special manifestation of Abhiram Thakur's whip. Abhiram Thakur, Mahaprabhu's associate, was having a whip, Jayamangala, So anybody who was touching with that whip was receiving Krishna Prem. But Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was having his walking cane, his walking stick, so just next to him. So you know so many shlokas, but you know the meanings. Do you know the meanings? Where is my stick? And some other disciples, Raghunath Bhatta, one Gurudev's disciple, Raghunath Bhatta, so many years studying Srimad Bhagavatam, but do you know the what's that? Gunamaya, those elements, the 24 elements, do you know, have you learned? So many years you study Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. Just smashing the false pride of disciples like this, Mathuranath Prabhu, Australia, Mathuranath, how old are you? 37. 37 years, but Dhruva Maharaj was 5. And he was crying for Krishna, and you are not crying for Krishna. You're crying for Maya, but I will tell Maya, Maya must punish you and make you cry. I will tell Maya to punish you, so that you can cry, like this. One lady, you had one wife, she kicked you. You had another lady, another wife, she kicked you. So how many times do you want like this? You're speaking like this. Very, very straightforward, like this. So those are the words of Sadhguru. I will tell Maya to punish you, like our Gurudev was speaking, He was speaking, one disciple said, oh, Gurudev, I have a problem with Rahu. Oh, Rahu, I know him and he knows me and he's afraid of me. Like this. Like this. Okay, so Maya Devi is afraid of pure devotee, and also Rahu, what to speak of other planets. So very last thing, his disappearance lila, which is especially important for us today. So when he was very disturbed with the situation in ISKCON, and they were actually about to expel right, from ISKCON. So how to say, the undercover, under the carpet work was being done for that, and he knew about that. So he was thinking, oh, I have to stay in my Gurudev society because Prabhupada told him never leave ISKCON, always be in ISKCON. But he wanted, like ISKCON preaching, to be pure. So that's another thing. So he could not stay, and he could not to stay. So that's why he chose to leave. In that same way as Srila Prabhupada, after his disappearance, such a turmoil starts. But before he left, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj said one important thing. He said, Prema era will come. The Prema era will come, and that will start in 1996, he said. So that was the preaching of our Gurudev, Nitya Preshtoshi Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj, the Prema era of preaching. So every time Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was given the book of our Gurudev, he was reading cover to cover, immediately. Once he saw him in Jagannath Puri, 1993, and the brahmacharis were surprised, there were Madhava Maharaj, Pan Maharaj there. They were surprised, such a humble sannyasi, ISKCON sannyasi, but so humble. And he said, oh, can I see Prabhuji Charan, Srila Narayana Maharaj? Like this. Oh, no, he's resting. So he came later, and they were discussing so many subjects, mostly about Dhamma, Tattva, what is the best Dhamma. Navadvip Dhamma is the best, and so many others. Gour Govinda Maharaj was asking very intricate questions. So in his biography, there's mentioning of that in the second volume of Gurudev's biography. So then, in Mayapur, 1996, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj went for those meetings. His last tour he finished, he arrived from Africa, Kenya, I think, January 96. He was there in February 96, beginning of February 96. He was in Bhubaneswar, and he did an amazing 2-day festival for Nityananda Trayodashi. So we sang that his tune today, Nitai Pada Kamala, and he was singing, he was just so much absorbed in Nityananda, such a mellow, completely kirtan. He was singing, and he was hearing, somebody was reading Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, and he was speaking on pastimes of Lord Nityananda like this for 2 days. It was amazing mood, So then he left for Gadaigiri and had, as it became clear later, last darshan of Gopal. So then he went to Mayapur. In Mayapur, he was so unhappy because he has to hear all those things, political things every day. Then finally, on the evening of this day, 27 years ago, 1996, 27 years ago, some disciples of Gurudev, also disciples of Prabhupada, came to his room. And the witness was, Tridandi Maharaj's former wife, Vajayantimala Didi. She was there. So she remembers that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was asked a question by someone. Why did Mahaprabhu stay in Jagannath Puri in his last years? Why? Gour Govinda Maharaj became so happy, So happy. Oh, finally, somebody wants to hear Harikatha. Finally. He was so exhausted by all those, political topics and bad things. So he started speaking of Harikatha. So basically, he told that third story about Rathayatra, how Krishna was in separation of Radhika, he lost consciousness, and when Radhika was separation of Krishna, she lost consciousness in near Nandagaon, Uddavakyari, that place. So then how Subhadra found her way and he took Krishna back to Vrindavan. First Baladev came, then Subhadra, then she prepared everything. Then Krishna came, and then Krishna saw the gopi who was lying down, almost unconscious, practically unconscious, on the petal bed, in such a condition. When Krishna appeared there, Vishaka told in the ear of Srimati Radhika, "That's Krishna, your beloved has appeared." So Radhika opened her eyes, and the last thing Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj said was, eye-to-eye union. So their eyes, two pairs of eyes met, was eye-to-eye union, and then his speech failed, he could not speak. So, "I'm sorry, I cannot speak," he said. So then he was lying on the bed, and then last thing he said, very last thing he said, Kirtan, Namakoro, sing Kirtan. So they started singing Kirtan. Somebody brought the image of his Gopal. Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj said, "Gopal," and left. So he was very, very amazing Vaishnava, as witnessed by Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, when Gour Govinda Maharaj was in that state, for like a few months, I think, in a state of complete ecstasy. Doctors could not say anything. Even exorcist was brought, couldn't say anything. But then Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj came. And he said, "Oh, Baba, this is Bhav. This is Bhav." So he was changing colors, like sometimes it was red, sometimes it was like green, those very different colors of body. Like foam in his mouth, that was Bhav. So he ascertained that it was really so. So Srila Gurudev was saying, that Gour Govinda Maharaj is in my line, or rather I am in his line. Gurudev was humbly saying, I am in his line, like this. So Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was always revered so much by Srila Gurudev, and somehow his mood so close. I don't know, to me, I've never met him. First came to India, he just left, 1996. So I unfortunately never met him. Like his disciples, say jewels also of Gurudev Sangha. That same Pujapad Damodar Maharaj, he gave so much. He was a bhakta at the time. So we're worshipping his lotus feet today. I'm sorry I spoke a bit longer, maybe than necessary, but I'm sure you were happy also to hear those lilas, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, and especially Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. So all glories to the lotus feet. We cannot repay them, cannot repay. When we're trying to say thank you to Srila Gurudev, he was saying, you cannot say thank you to Guru. You can ask only, Kim Koro, how can I serve? Kim Koro means Kim Kara means serve. It's very easy to give life. Just give life. Easy to repay. Just give your life. Give your life to Prabhupada. Give your life to Gurudev Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. So I'm aspiring for that. Please bless me that I become a real, how to say, associate of those great personalities. So we're praying to lotus feet today. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Since tomorrow we'll resume Srimad Bhagavatam Katha, and two very nice, enjoyable programs will be here at the temple. Oh, number 3 will be Ekadashi, and number 4 will be Shivaratri also. So. And then we'll have programs elsewhere in the houses of devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. Thank you so much.